Millionaire husband cheated and kicked out his pregnant wife. 5 years later, he regretted it. He was once hailed as the city's brightest star, a dashing millionaire who graced the pages of Forbes, commanded respect in the boardroom, and reveled in his picture-perfect marriage. Yet, behind the polished smile and designer suits lay a heart twisted by arrogance and betrayal. In one vicious outburst, he cast out his pregnant wife, certain she was a burden on his ambitious life. Little did he know that single act would haunt him for years. Now, 5 years later, hollowed by regrets and haunted by a past he tried to bury, he's about to face the consequences of the cruelest mistake he ever made. Oliver Beaumont was not born with a silver spoon. Raised in a cramped corner of Queens, New York, he shared a one-bedroom apartment with his single mother, Lucy, who worked double shifts at a local diner. To everyone around him, Oliver seemed both fiercely determined and unnervingly focused from a young age. He told himself that one day he'd never worry about making rent, that he'd live perched above the city in a gleaming penthouse. That ambition drove him to excel. He secured scholarships, powered through business school, and eventually launched a boutique real estate firm, Beaumont Properties. It specialized in flipping undervalued commercial lots into profitable ventures. By 30, Oliver's knack for transforming rundown properties into high-end assets had the press labeling him the real estate wonderkind. Forbes mentioned him in an article about up-and-coming real estate stars. He felt invincible. During this meteoric ascent, Oliver met Celia Donovan, a graduate student in architecture. Interning at a design studio, he first spotted her at a networking event in Manhattan's Flatiron district. She was discussing sustainable building methods with an older architect, her eyes sparkling with genuine passion for environmental design. Intrigued by her warmth and sincerity, Oliver sauntered over and introduced himself. Their connection was swift and electric. Within months, they were dating, bonding over city walks, and shared fascination for building design. Where Oliver saw numbers and profit margins, Celia saw artistry and social impact. She tempered his sharper edges with a dreamier perspective. Her optimism about changing communities for the better offered an antidote to Oliver's bottom-line mentality. When he proposed on the rooftop of the Peninsula Hotel, it wasn't just about romance. It was about merging visions, his unstoppable drive, her unshakable compassion. Celia said yes through joyful tears, and soon they married in an intimate ceremony at a converted warehouse in Brooklyn. Exactly the kind of transformation they both loved. There pictures him in a tailored tux, her in a flowing gown adorned the walls of Oliver's new penthouse. To the outside world, they were unstoppable, a power couple forging a modern empire. But marriage, Celia would later note, is about staying when success isn't guaranteed. As time went on, Oliver's focus skewed heavily toward ambitious deals, late-night negotiations, and flights to scout potential properties in far-flung states. Celia watched him bend the moral lines in pursuit of bigger and bolder profits. Concern flickered in her eyes, but she loved him, believing they'd find balance eventually. Little did she know, a wave of betrayal was cresting on the horizon. Oliver's restlessness, stoked by success and flattery, would lead him into the arms of someone else. And when faced with the pregnancy that should have united them, he would choose power and greed over love and loyalty, launching a tragedy that would take half a decade to unravel. As Beaumont Properties expanded, so did Oliver's appetite for high-stakes deals. Overnight trips became the norm. He jumped between Los Angeles, Miami, and even London, orchestrating multi-million-dollar property acquisitions. At first, Celia tried to accompany him, hoping to combine work and pleasure, but the constant travel clashed with her architecture projects. Soon she found herself at home, increasingly alone. Late-night phone calls, once filled with whispered "I miss you" sentiments, shifted into quick updates about property valuations or heated rants about troublesome investors. Whenever Celia tried to share her own concerns about her new eco-friendly building designs or her desire to start a family, Oliver brushed her aside, claiming he was exhausted or pressed for time. Small cracks began to form in their marriage. Celia noticed that Oliver's phone lit up at odd hours with messages he never discussed. He began dressing sharper than usual, wearing new colognes she hadn't picked out, returning home with traces of perfume that wasn't hers. He changed his passcodes. When she asked about it, he snapped, accusing her of being paranoid. Celia felt a pit of dread settle in her stomach. One evening, she confronted him directly. She had prepared a simple dinner, lighting candles to evoke the warmth they once shared. Over a plate of her homemade pasta, she laid her heart bare, saying she felt him slipping away. Instead of reassuring her, Oliver seemed annoyed. He paced around the living room, phone in hand, as if waiting for an urgent text. "Celia," he finally muttered, "you can't expect me to shut down my business just to hold your hand. This isn't some fairy tale. Big deals require sacrifice." Her eyes stung with tears. "I'm not asking you to shut down your business, Oliver. I just need you, us." But Oliver was already lost in the allure of the next big venture. In reality, he'd grown infatuated with a young interior designer named Samantha Reed, a consultant for one of his lucrative hotel renovation projects in Miami. Samantha was flirtatious, bold, and worshipped Oliver's ambition. She was the polar opposite of Celia's gentle, grounding presence. Oliver, trapped in his own narcissistic haze, found Samantha's admiration more thrilling than his wife's steady devotion. Yet, Celia had no concrete proof, just a gnawing intuition. Driven by love and memories of their shared dreams, she tried to cling to hope. She believed her husband was merely stressed, that if she was patient, he'd return to the man she married. That hope flickered dangerously when Celia discovered she was pregnant. A swirl of excitement and anxiety overwhelmed her excitement for the life inside her, and fear over Oliver's reaction. Would this new chapter bring them closer, or would it widen the gulf between them? Mustering courage, she decided to tell him at dinner, imagining he might see in this unborn child a reason to slow down and refocus. Little did she realize, Oliver had already chosen a different path, one that would sever their bond in the cruelest way. Celia rehearsed her announcement all afternoon. She'd gently place a wrapped onesie on the dinner table, a small gift signifying the baby. She even tied a note to it saying, "Can't wait to meet you, Daddy." Standing before a mirror in their master bedroom, she took several calming breaths. This news, she believed, might be the spark that rekindled the fading warmth between them. When Oliver arrived home, the stale tension he carried in his shoulders was all too visible. He barely greeted Celia, tossing his briefcase onto the couch and mumbling about a stressful meeting. Undeterred, she led him to the table, where 2 plates of steak and roasted vegetables waited. "Oliver," she began, her voice gentle, "I have something special for you." He half glanced at her, more focused on checking messages on his phone. She gently placed the wrapped onesie in front of him. Confused, he set his phone aside to open it. The instant he read the note, his expression froze, lips parting in a silent gasp. For a moment, Celia glimpsed something that resembled genuine emotion, a flicker in his eyes that might have been excitement or awe. But it extinguished almost immediately as a dark cloud of frustration took hold. He pushed back from the table, brow furrowed. "How far along?" he asked, voice clipped. "About 6 weeks," she replied softly, heart pounding. "I found out just yesterday." Oliver raked a hand through his hair, pacing around the dining room. "This is not good timing," he muttered. "I'm on the verge of finalizing a massive deal in Florida. I can't have distractions right now." Celia blinked, her joy deflating. Distractions. This is our child, Oliver. We've talked about wanting a family eventually. He shook his head. Eventually, yes. But not now. I'm swamped. Celia, how did this happen? Were you not careful? His words cut like a blade. Celia's cheeks burned, tears brimming. We both decided to stop birth control months ago, remember? She managed, voice trembling. You said you wanted us to try soon. Oliver muttered something under his breath, anger swirling in his eyes. Plans change. You should have told me you were off the pill. This puts a massive wrench in the works. Celia felt sick to her stomach. She'd envisioned him laughing or crying tears of joy, enveloping her in a hug. Instead, he stared at her like she'd single-handedly sabotaged his empire. Panicked, she tried to salvage the moment, stepping closer. Oliver, this is our baby, she pleaded. We can handle this. We have resources, money, and we'll have each other. But Oliver turned away, picking up his phone to check something. In that gesture, Celia saw his choice. Business first, family second. Shattered, she realized the man she loved was slipping through her fingers, and the child growing inside her was collateral damage in a world consumed by power and deals. Dinner lay untouched. Without another word, Oliver stormed out of the penthouse, claiming an emergency meeting. The onesie remained on the table, a silent testament to dreams crushed in mere minutes. Celia sat alone, tears dampening her cheeks, replaying the moment her pregnancy announcement transformed from a gift to a burden in her husband's eyes. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the penthouse turned icy. Oliver seemed to avoid Celia, often claiming urgent obligations. When he was around, their exchanges were minimal and tense, overshadowed by an unspoken resentment. Celia, desperate for an explanation, tried to schedule a calm sit-down, but Oliver brushed her off every time. Behind the scenes, Samantha Reed's presence in Oliver's life loomed larger. She had become his sounding board, a confidant he shared frustrations with, particularly about the unexpected pregnancy. Samantha fanned his self-pity, insisting that a child would only weigh him down. Whenever Oliver vented about Celia's insensitivity to his business timeline, Samantha validated his complaints, fueling his sense of victimhood. One evening, Celia decided enough was enough. She rummaged through Oliver's office, looking for clues. Her heart pounded with guilt. She'd never snooped like this. But the secrecy had reached a boiling point. That's when she stumbled upon receipts from a luxury hotel in Miami, receipts indicating 2 dinners for 2, along with an extended stay that didn't match Oliver's official itinerary. Worse, there were pictures on his desk of him and Samantha standing shoulder to shoulder at a beachfront property, beaming at the camera with an intimacy far beyond professional courtesy. Devastation slammed into Celia. She sank to the floor, tears blurring her vision. The puzzle pieces aligned too well, his aloofness, the phone calls at odd hours, the dismissive attitude. He wasn't just frustrated by the pregnancy, he was entangled with another woman. Oliver returned home to find the penthouse lights dim, and Celia standing in the living room, the incriminating receipts and photos in hand. Her face was etched with anguish. Care to explain? She asked, voice shaking. He froze, guilt evident in his eyes before it hardened into defensiveness. You went through my stuff? He snapped, snatching the receipts from her. That's a massive invasion of privacy. Celia's anger flared. Don't you dare turn this on me, she cried, wiping at tears. You're the one sneaking around with another woman, while I'm pregnant with our child. Oliver's posture stiffened. It's not what you think, he spat, though his tone lacked conviction. Samantha is a business associate. The trip required us to entertain clients. Stop lying. Celia cut in, voice raw. I can see from the photos it's more than that. You can't hide your affair anymore. For a moment, Oliver's facade cracked, revealing a flicker of shame, but instead of admitting his wrongdoing, he lashed out. "This is exactly why I'm done your constant nagging, prying, clinging. You don't understand the pressure I'm under." Celia's lips trembled. "I'm your wife, Oliver. We made vows, and I'm carrying your child. Doesn't that mean anything?" His silence said it all. Rage and self-loathing warred on his face. Then he hurled words she'd never forget. "I never asked for this baby, and I won't let you ruin my life with your fantasies. If you can't accept how things are, you should leave." The finality in his voice crushed her. Celia stared, disbelieving, as Oliver marched to the master bedroom. In that instant, the dream of a bright future shattered. As tears streaked her cheeks, Celia grappled with the horrifying truth. Her husband not only cheated, he wanted her and the unborn baby gone. The next day dawned with a brittle hush. Celia, eyes swollen from a night spent crying, packed a small bag of essentials. She wondered if Oliver would apologize or beg her to stay. But he left early for a flight to Miami, uttering only a cold, "This isn't working anymore." No acknowledgement of their baby, no mention of love. Alone in the penthouse that now felt like a stranger's domain, Celia found herself clutching her belly, silently promising the child she wouldn't let them suffer for Oliver's callousness. She had savings from her architecture projects, but it was hardly enough to maintain the extravagant lifestyle Oliver had built. The pain of betrayal mixed with an urgent need to survive. By afternoon, the building's doorman handed Celia an envelope. Inside was a formal notice from Oliver's lawyer, detailing her agreement to vacate the property within 48 hours. It spelled out a paltry settlement that might cover a few months' rent barely. The final lines suggested that if she pursued more, Oliver would fight her in court. Celia's hands shook. The cruelty of his actions took her breath away. Her pregnancy was only a few months along, her future uncertain. Their marriage had no formal prenuptial arrangement, but Oliver's legal team was swift and ruthless, citing his sole ownership of the property and assets. The letter threatened to bury her in paperwork if she dared contest. It was as if Oliver wanted to erase her entirely. Feeling numb, Celia called her best friend, Layla, a fellow architect. Layla insisted Celia come stay at her cramped studio apartment in Brooklyn. It was hardly ideal, but Celia had nowhere else. She left a brief note on the kitchen counter. "I'm leaving, as you wanted. I hope you remember someday that there are things more important than deals, Celia." She walked out with a single suitcase, stepping into the quiet elevator. Memories flitted before her eyes, Oliver's wedding vows, the nights they stayed up giggling about dream homes. The day they discovered they shared a passion for renovating abandoned spaces into sanctuaries. All of it felt like a distant dream. The building's doorman, who'd once greeted her cheerfully as Miss S. Beaumont, now avoided her gaze. No one stopped her. She slipped away from the penthouse like a ghost. Celia arrived at Layla's tiny studio, tears streaming. In that moment, her friend's hug was the only warmth she had. For hours, they discussed the betrayal, the pregnancy, and the bleak horizon. "He can't just throw you out," Layla seethed, "especially when you're pregnant with his child." But legal battles cost money, and Celia felt too emotionally shattered to fight immediately. In the following days, she tried to find stability. Her architecture job allowed remote work, offering some steady income. Yet each morning, she'd awake to the reality of her precarious situation, outrunning heartbreak while her body changed daily to accommodate the life inside her. Oliver, too, would soon discover that there are consequences to casting away what truly mattered. But for now, Celia faced only darkness, unaware that her quiet resilience would one day become the very thing that undid him. Time marched on, heedless of heartbreak. In the wake of her eviction, Celia refocused on survival. She rented a modest one-bedroom apartment in Queens, close to Layla's place. The area wasn't glamorous, but it provided a sense of community. Neighbors greeted her kindly, never suspecting she'd once lived in a Manhattan penthouse. Bit by bit, Celia carved out a life that revolved around two goals: providing for her unborn child and healing from betrayal. Oliver's name rarely crossed her lips. The baby, whom she named Aurora, arrived after a grueling labor. In the hospital room, Layla held Celia's hand while tears of relief and love poured down her cheeks. "She's perfect," whispered Celia, cradling her infant, but the emptiness of Oliver's absence loomed like a shadow on that joyous day. In the birth certificate's father section, Celia left it blank. She told herself Aurora didn't need a father who discarded her before birth. Celia threw herself into freelance architectural design. Her eco-conscious approach, combined with her knack for maximizing small spaces, earned her a steady trickle of clients, local businesses, homeowners wanting sustainable renovations, even a small library in need of an expansion. Over the years, she developed a strong reputation thanks to word of mouth and glowing reviews online. Though money was tight, she managed to provide for Aurora, ensuring her daughter never felt deprived. Meanwhile, Oliver soared to new financial heights. Tabloids frequently chronicled Beaumont Properties' expansions, major hotel chains, a rumored partnership in Dubai, glitzy collaborations with top designers. Samantha Reed made occasional appearances at his side, fueling speculation they were an item. Photos of them at the Waldorf Astoria's charity ball or stepping out of a chauffeured car in London filled the society pages. Yet behind the glossy facade, Oliver felt a nagging emptiness. His personal life never quite stabilized with Samantha, who demanded extravagance and parties. And whenever he accomplished a major milestone, like signing a record-breaking real estate deal, he experienced a fleeting rush, then a hollow regret he couldn't articulate. Late at night, in the pristine silence of his penthouse, Oliver would sometimes scroll through old photos, stumbling on images of him and Celia from a happier time. He'd quickly shut them off, refusing to dwell on the life he'd tossed aside. 5 years slipped by, each one forging Aurora into a spirited child who loved painting city skylines and building tiny cardboard houses. Celia taught her about creativity, compassion, and the importance of caring for the world around them. Sometimes, Aurora asked about her father. Celia, lips tight, explained in gentle terms that he wasn't part of their life. She sensed the day was coming when Aurora would crave more answers. In those 5 years, Oliver never reached out, never tried to see if Celia bore his child to term. He convinced himself that severing ties was best for both of them. But deep down, an unsettled guilt churned. Little did he know that fate often weaves tragedies and reckonings in mysterious ways. And soon enough, Oliver would face the consequences of having turned his back on the one person who could have saved him from himself. Celia never guessed that her carefully rebuilt world would collide with Oliver's again. But New York, vast as it is, has a way of orchestrating unlikely encounters. One Saturday afternoon, she and Aurora ventured to a children's science fair at the Museum of Modern Art's special annex. Aurora, now 4.5, was eager to see a demonstration on sustainable architecture for kids. They wandered through the exhibit, Aurora's eyes alight with curiosity. She paused at each interactive station, absorbing instructions on how solar panels worked or how recycled materials could shape eco-friendly buildings. Celia beamed with pride at her daughter's wide-eyed interest. Suddenly, she felt an unsettling presence, a prickle at the back of her neck. Across the hall, near an abstract sculpture, stood Oliver Beaumont. He looked older, his once youthful features sharpened by stress, but still exuding that commanding air. Standing beside him, leaning in with feigned interest, was Samantha Reed. She wore a chic dress, her posture screaming confidence. Celia's heart lurched, an avalanche of memories flooding back. She instinctively pulled Aurora closer. Before she could slip away, Oliver glanced around, his gaze skimming the crowd, and froze. Their eyes locked. A flicker of shock passed across his face. It was obvious he recognized her, despite the years. She saw him lean towards Samantha, murmuring something, then stepping forward as if to approach. Panic and defiance wrestled within Celia. She considered darting behind a display, but Aurora tugged her hand, wanting to investigate a model of a wind turbine. Celia took a deep breath. She refused to run. She had nothing to be ashamed of. If Oliver wanted to speak, she'd face him on her terms. He made his way over, Samantha hanging back with a suspicious scowl. Up close, Celia noticed lines at the corners of his eyes, a tension in his jaw. "Celia," he said quietly, voice uncertain. "I didn't expect to see you." She nodded curtly. "Nor I, you." She glanced at Aurora, who was too engrossed in the exhibit to pay attention. Her chest tightened. Would he realize that the little girl was his daughter? Oliver opened his mouth, searching for words. "How have you been?" It sounded hollow, painfully inadequate. Celia answered honestly, "Busy with work." "Raising my child." Her tone was clipped. She wasn't about to volunteer details, but she wouldn't hide Aurora either. Oliver's gaze flicked to the child. A puzzle piece seemed to click, and something akin to remorse shadowed his eyes. Before he could speak again, Samantha marched over. "There you are," Samantha purred, slipping an arm around Oliver. She shot Celia a half smirk. "We should get going. The developer's dinner is soon." Oliver looked torn, hovering between the life he chose and the past he abandoned. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Celia, maybe we could catch up sometime." She stiffened, a swirl of emotions raging inside. "We have our own life now," she said, not unkindly but with finality. Then she turned away, guiding Aurora's hand. Samantha's pointed stare followed them. As they left, Celia felt a tempest of confusion. She had glimpsed genuine regret in Oliver's eyes. But it changed nothing. She'd built a new life, one he had no place in, or so she told herself. Oliver, meanwhile, stood rooted to the spot, haunted by the fleeting image of a child who might and likely did carry his blood. And in that moment, regret coiled around his heart tighter than ever before. That night, Oliver couldn't sleep. Back at his penthouse, recently redecorated at Samantha's insistence, he stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the sparkling Manhattan skyline. Yet all he saw in his mind's eye was Celia's tense expression and the small child at her side. He replayed the conversation, the way Celia said, "Raising my child," a statement with layers of meaning he'd been too cowardly to explore years ago. Samantha perched on the sofa behind him, flipping through design catalogues. She noticed his distraction, huffed, and asked what was on his mind. He brushed her off, claiming fatigue. That was enough for Samantha to sense it was about Celia. She recalled the museum incident with a scowl. Fueled by jealousy, Samantha launched into a tirade. "She's ancient history, Oliver. Don't let her guilt trip you now. We have real deals to focus on." But Oliver barely heard her. Something deep inside him ached. Memories of the day he kicked Celia out while she was pregnant flooded his thoughts. His own child, he had forcibly removed them from his life. The realization crashed over him that the little girl was almost certainly his daughter. Guilt gnawed at his insides. He recalled how Celia once said she wanted to raise children in a home filled with love and creativity. He had denied her that dream. He had destroyed something pure. Over the next few days, Oliver grew restless. Samantha tried to keep him occupied with parties, potential real estate expansions, and new design projects. Yet none of it satisfied him. He found himself rereading old emails from Celia, stumbling upon pictures of them smiling at a groundbreaking ceremony for their first joint renovation. Now, his success rang hollow. Even record profits from a Miami hotel didn't spark the usual thrill. Behind the scenes, cracks formed in Oliver's professional world. A major hotel chain reconsidered a partnership, citing rumors about Oliver's erratic behavior. A CFO at Beaumont Properties confided in him that some top executives were worried about his lack of focus. Normally, Oliver would have stomped out such doubts, but now he simply nodded, haunted by regrets. The man who once reveled in unstoppable ambition found his power draining away. Meanwhile, Celia also grappled with emotional upheaval. After the museum encounter, Aurora asked about the sad man who knew Mommy. Celia simply said he was someone from a long time ago. Still, the child sensed her mother's distress. Layla urged Celia to consider telling Aurora the truth about her father. Celia remained torn. She loathed Oliver's betrayal, but wondered if denying Aurora knowledge of her father's identity was fair. Oliver tried to track Celia down. He scoured her old phone number, social media, even hired a private investigator. He discovered she had her own small architectural firm, now specializing in sustainable community projects. The more he learned, the deeper his admiration grew for the woman he cast aside. Each new detail was a dagger of regret. Night after night, Oliver stared at the single photo he had of Celia, saved on his phone, a snapshot from their honeymoon in Napa Valley. He realized that the child's face from the museum cameo was a reflection of that same warm spirit. For the first time, his armor of arrogance cracked. He yearned to mend what he broke, unaware that redemption might not be as simple as signing a new contract. Some things, once shattered, never truly become whole again. Celia was in the midst of preparing Aurora's favorite breakfast banana pancakes when the intercom buzzed unexpectedly. Glancing at the clock, she wondered who could be calling at 7:30 in the morning. She wiped her hands on a kitchen towel and answered. "Miss Donovan?" said a cautious voice. "There's a gentleman here, Oliver Beaumont. Says he wants to see you. Should I send him up?" Her heart plummeted. She gripped the counter for support, memories rushing like a flood. Aurora, seated at the kitchen table coloring, noticed her mother's sudden pallor. Celia inhaled sharply. "No, I'll come down," she responded, bracing herself. Downstairs, in the apartment building's modest lobby, Oliver stood out like a peacock among pigeons, dressed in a tailored navy suit, fidgeting with his phone, ignoring the curious stares of residents who recognized him from business headlines. The moment he saw Celia, he stepped forward, face stricken with uncertainty. "Celia," he began, his voice catching. I wanted to talk. Please, let me explain, or at least let me say, I'm sorry." She folded her arms, every muscle in her body tight. "What exactly are you sorry for? Cheating? Kicking me out while I was pregnant? Ignoring me for 5 years?" Oliver's shoulders sagged. "All of it," he said quietly. "I acted horribly. I was consumed with ambition, and I thought pushing you away was the solution. But I was wrong, and I'm trying to make it right. Let me come upstairs. Maybe we can talk in private." Her jaw clenched. A torrent of emotions raged, anger, hurt, a flicker of longing for closure. "I have a child upstairs, Oliver," she said evenly, "one you left behind before she even saw the light of day." His eyes flickered with pain. "I know, and I want to meet her, if that's possible." "I'm her father, Celia." That final statement nearly made her shake with fury. "Father?" she repeated in a whisper. "You forfeited that title a long time ago." She drew a trembling breath. "But Aurora is the sweetest soul, and I won't let you barge into her life just because you feel guilty now." Oliver bowed his head. "I understand. But please, at least let me prove I've changed. Give me a chance to be part of her life." Celia hesitated, waging an internal battle. Aurora was curious about her father, but Celia feared letting Oliver's chaos disrupt her daughter's stability. She also recognized that denying Aurora a chance to know him might create its own scars. Sighing, she relented slightly. "We can talk at a cafe down the street, alone. Then we'll see." Oliver nodded, relief washing over his features. They agreed to meet in an hour. As he left, Celia felt the weight of the past press down on her. She wondered if she was making a mistake. Yet a quiet voice inside reminded her that while forgiveness might be elusive, clarity could help Aurora someday. Back in the apartment, she found Aurora still working on her drawing. The sight of her bright eyes steadied Celia's resolve. Oliver's reappearance might threaten everything she'd built, but she wasn't that naive. Frightened woman from 5 years ago. Whatever conversation awaited, she would face it head-on for the sake of the child who'd never known her father's face. An hour later, Celia and Oliver sat at a small table in a quiet cafe a few blocks from her apartment. A swirl of aromatic coffee and pastries enveloped them, though neither felt like indulging. The tension between them was palpable, two people with a shared history that had splintered into bitterness and regret. Oliver tried to speak first but faltered, running a hand through his hair as if searching for courage. Eventually he whispered, "I have no excuse for what I did. I was selfish, obsessed with success. Samantha fed my ego, telling me a baby would hold me back. I convinced myself you'd be better off without me." Celia listened, her posture rigid. That's not something you decide for someone else, especially when there's a child involved. He nodded, voice heavy. "I know, and I've spent 5 years trying to ignore that guilt. But seeing her at the museum tore me apart. Please believe I'm not here to buy my way back. I just want a chance to know my daughter." Celia's eyes stung. "Her name is Aurora. She knows nothing about you, and for a long time, I wasn't sure if that was a blessing or a curse. I struggled financially, emotionally, but we managed. She's my world." Oliver swallowed hard, imagining the hardships Celia endured. He asked about Aurora's interests, her personality, her favorite color, desperate for glimpses of the life he'd missed. At first, Celia answered with brief guarded statements. Gradually, her tone softened. Aurora's curiosity about architecture, her love for drawing houses and tall buildings, her laugh that lit up a room. Oliver soaked in every detail, each revelation a fresh wave of remorse. Then he gently said, "I want to meet her, Celia. Properly. I'll respect your boundaries, but I need that chance." Celia's chest tightened. A swirl of conflicting emotions wrestled inside her, fear of exposing Aurora to a father who might vanish again, anger at Oliver's gall, and a small glimmer of empathy. "She's not some toy you can pick up when you feel like it," she said, voice trembling. "You can't waltz in and out, Oliver," he nodded solemnly. "I promise I'm here to stay. If it means weekly supervised visits at first, so be it. I'll do whatever it takes. I know I've done irreparable harm, but maybe, just maybe, I can be better for her." Silence stretched. Celia sipped her coffee, eyes downcast. Memories of their early days flickered when Oliver was kind, supportive, a man she believed in. Could that man still exist under the layers of betrayal? At last, she spoke, her words measured. "You can see her next weekend." Briefly. "But I'll be present. And if she gets upset, we'll end it immediately." Relief flooded Oliver's face. "Thank you," he said softly, eyes glistening. "I won't squander this." Celia stood, heart thudding. This decision might change Aurora's life. She left the cafe, leaving Oliver alone, contemplating how to rebuild a bridge he'd burned to ashes. Outside, the crisp air stung her lungs. She questioned whether she was opening Pandora's box. Yet, for Aurora's sake, she'd risk it, giving Oliver a chance to prove fatherly love could triumph over the sins of his past. The day of Oliver and Aurora's first meeting arrived with a nervous energy hovering in the air. Celia arranged it at a small community park near her apartment. Children's laughter echoed from the swings and slides, while the sun cast dappled shadows beneath tall oak trees. She chose this setting, hoping the outdoor space would ease some of the tension. She explained to Aurora that a friend of Mommy's wanted to say hello. The child, curious but not suspicious, agreed, too enthralled by the promise of a new playmate. Celia could hardly still her racing heart, bracing for how Aurora might react to Oliver. Would she sense a connection? Oliver arrived early, dressed more casually than usual, no tailored suit, just a simple sweater and jeans. He clutched a small plush elephant in one hand, a gift he'd agonized over picking. When Celia guided Aurora toward him, the little girl regarded him with wide, inquisitive eyes. Oliver's expression quivered between a forced smile and the edge of tears. "Hi," he said softly, crouching to Aurora's level. "I'm Oliver. Nice to meet you." His voice trembled. He offered the plush elephant. Aurora glanced up at Celia for reassurance, then slowly accepted it, giggling at its floppy ears. Oliver exhaled, tension ebbing as Aurora's acceptance lit a flicker of hope in him. Celia lingered nearby, watchful. They strolled through the park, Aurora skipping and twirling the elephant by its trunk. She showed Oliver her latest treasure, a set of colored pencils, and described the pictures she loved to draw. Every now and then she'd ask innocuous questions. "Why do you want to be my friend? Are you Mommy's classmate?" Oliver struggled to answer. He glanced at Celia, who simply said, "He's someone I used to know, sweetie." Aurora nodded, unfazed for now. As Aurora darted toward a climbing frame, Oliver seized the moment to speak to Celia. "She's amazing," he murmured, voice tight with wonder. "You've done an incredible job raising her." Pain flashed across his face. "I can't believe I missed all these years." Celia's guard remained high. "It wasn't easy. We managed." She paused, scanning Aurora's bright laughter as she climbed. "For her sake, I'll let you spend time together. But let's move slowly, Oliver. I don't want her confused or hurt if you back out again." He nodded earnestly. "I understand. I won't walk away this time. I swear." Their conversation paused as Aurora bounded back, tugging on Oliver's hand to join her in a game of tag. Celia watched from a bench, conflicting emotions swirling. Part of her felt relief that Aurora was comfortable. Another part feared this fragile new bond might collapse if Oliver's old selfishness resurfaced. The morning slipped by in a series of small joys, a shared giggle over a clumsy slide down the playground, Oliver pushing Aurora on the swing as she squealed for more. For a few hours, they formed a semblance of a family. The scene tugged at Celia's heart, stirring memories of the hopeful start of her marriage. When it came time to leave, Aurora shyly hugged Oliver, thanking him for the elephant. He whispered a promise to see her again soon. Celia noted the wetness in his eyes, unsure if it was guilt or gratitude. As they parted ways, Oliver's expression spoke volumes. He realized just how precious a father-daughter bond could be, and how grave his mistake had been in forsaking it. The question loomed whether this new chapter marked the start of redemption, or simply another heartbreak waiting to unfold. Over the next few weeks, Oliver visited Aurora regularly under Celia's watchful eye. These meetups took place in public spaces or at Celia's cozy apartment, with Layla sometimes present. Initially, Aurora treated Oliver like a friendly adult. She'd show him her drawings and ask him simple questions about the world. Gradually, she became more comfortable, inviting him into her imaginative games, climbing into his lap with crayons and storybooks. Each time Oliver arrived, Celia observed him, searching for any sign of impatience or pretense. Instead, she saw genuine warmth. He showed up with child-friendly architectural mini-sets for them to assemble together. He asked Aurora about her day at preschool, listened attentively to her rambling stories, and even attempted to bake cookies with her in Celia's small kitchen, though they burned half of them in the process. All the while, Celia's heart waged a private battle. She couldn't deny the joy in Aurora's eyes whenever Oliver appeared. She admired the patience he demonstrated, a stark contrast to the ruthless businessman she remembered. And yet, her own pain lingered. The memory of him flinging her out of his penthouse, pregnant and alone, loomed over any flicker of renewed affection. One afternoon, after a particularly delightful session of building a cardboard house with Aurora, Oliver asked Celia if they could talk in private. Layla kindly offered to take Aurora to the nearby park, leaving the two alone in the living room. Oliver took a seat on the worn couch, which felt worlds away from his penthouse's designer furniture. He gazed around with a hint of sadness, noticing how modestly Celia lived now, each piece of decor carefully chosen, reflecting her creative spirit without the extravagance of wealth. "You've made a lovely home here," he said softly. Celia folded her arms, leaning against the kitchen doorway. "We managed just fine," she replied, guarded. "What did you want to discuss?" He inhaled, his voice low. "I've been thinking about everything. The way I treated you, the child I abandoned, the man I've become. I see now how empty my life was. Samantha and we broke up. She left after realizing I couldn't give her endless excitement. Or maybe I left. It's all a blur. But the point is, none of that matters now." Celia's eyes flickered. She listened silently, bracing for whatever came next. "I want to help," Oliver continued. "Financially, yes, pay for Aurora's education, her future. But also, I'd like to support your architectural firm if you'll let me. You're incredibly talented, and your sustainable projects are inspiring." A wave of old wounds rose within Celia. "Money won't fix what you did," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "and I don't need your pity." "We're not a charity case." He shook his head. "It's not pity, it's respect. And guilt, yes. But mostly I believe in you, Celia. I want to invest in your company, be part of something meaningful for a change." Her breath caught. She had spent years clawing her way to a stable, honest living. Accepting Oliver's money felt like a double-edged sword, his moral debt versus her desire for independence. Sensing her turmoil, Oliver added softly, "I know trust isn't rebuilt overnight. Whatever you decide, I'll abide by it. But I'm here to stay, and I'm done with half measures." Celia closed her eyes. In the space between them, a fragile possibility flickered, one that threatened to either mend some of the rifts or reopen them deeper. She opened her mouth to respond, uncertain of her own words. A new chapter was indeed beginning, though neither knew if it would lead to redemption or simply another heartbreak. A few months elapsed as Oliver continued to be an active presence in Aurora's life. He took her to art workshops, introduced her to child-friendly engineering kits, and even accompanied Celia to Aurora's preschool open house, proudly observing her daughter's handcrafted collages. The transformation in him was undeniable. Where once he exuded impatience and ambition, now he showed humility and genuine affection. Celia remained cautious. She let Oliver cover certain expenses, like Aurora's extracurricular lessons, while refusing outright handouts for her architectural business. Although she recognized his sincerity, she still clung to independence, scarred by memories of how swiftly he had once turned on her. Yet, as weeks turned into months, a delicate bond grew. They occasionally shared small moments, dinner at Celia's apartment after Aurora fell asleep, discussing old memories of their budding romance in Manhattan, or reviewing Celia's design proposals for a community center. Oliver offered insights, but never pressed his agenda, carefully respecting the boundaries she set. One crisp evening, after a local fundraiser where Celia showcased her sustainable housing concept, Oliver walked her home while Layla babysat Aurora. The city lights twinkled above, reminiscent of a time when their future seemed limitless. Pausing in front of her building, Celia took a shaky breath. "Thank you for your help tonight," she said. your input on the financial aspects. It helped me secure more donations. Oliver smiled gently. I'm glad. This project is important. It's going to help so many families in need. She studied him carefully. Gone was the man who once worshipped lavish galas and expensive getaways with Samantha. You've changed, she murmured. He nodded, gaze somber. I had to. I lost you. Lost the child I never knew. That emptiness forced me to confront who I became. I wish I could erase my past mistakes, but I can't. All I can do is be better now. Celia's eyes glistened. She recalled nights she cried herself to sleep in Layla's studio, pregnant and terrified. I never expected to let you back into Aurora's life, she admitted. But seeing the joy in her eyes, that's all I want. Her happiness. Oliver gently reached for Celia's hand, a hesitant gesture. When she didn't pull away, he clasped it, voice trembling. I don't expect forgiveness easily, but I do hope maybe someday we can move forward together. Her heart pounded at the implication. Was he asking for a second chance? The prospect of trusting him again felt both terrifying and oddly comforting. She withdrew her hand slowly. I don't know if I can go that far yet, she whispered, but I'm willing to see where this new path leads, carefully. Oliver exhaled relief, a small, hopeful smile on his lips. He bid her good night and departed, leaving Celia awash in a swirl of cautious optimism. For the first time, she entertained the thought that perhaps people could change, that broken things might be mended with enough love and patience. Still, the scars ran deep. She had Aurora's well-being to consider, her own dreams to nurture. Rebuilding trust with Oliver was like constructing a structure from rubble, a long, fragile process that could collapse at any misstep. Yet in that uncertain darkness, for the first time in half a decade, a faint light of healing beckoned. 6 months later, Celia stood on a small stage in front of a newly completed community center in the Bronx, wearing a hard hat and a broad smile. Her sustainable design had become a reality. Walls made from recycled materials, solar panels powering the building, rainwater collection systems integrated into the roof. Local families could now access affordable daycare, educational classes, and healthy meal programs. She had poured her heart into this project, and now it stood as a testament to what dedicated collaboration could achieve. In the audience, Aurora sat on Oliver's lap, waving a tiny handcrafted flag. Oliver caught Celia's eye, offering a supportive nod. His presence no longer rattled her. She felt gratitude that he'd helped gather sponsors for the project, including philanthropic donors who might have otherwise overlooked her small firm. Her business had grown modestly, and she even hired 2 part-time assistants, hopeful about the future. After the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Celia stepped down to greet well-wishers. Oliver and Aurora ran over, Aurora squealing with excitement. "Mommy, the building is so pretty." "Is it for me too?" Celia laughed, bending to hug her daughter. "It's for everyone, sweetheart. You can come here for art classes if you like." Oliver looked on, pride evident. "She asked me if she could paint a mural in the playroom," he explained with a chuckle. "I said, that's up to the boss, her mum," Celia smiled. "We'll see what the directors say." Then, gently, she added, "Thank you, Oliver, for everything you did to make this happen." He shrugged, a little embarrassed. "All I did was help with numbers and pitch decks. You're the visionary here." They fell silent as Aurora was whisked away by Layla, who promised to show her the new crafts corner. Leaving Oliver and Celia to share a rare moment alone, the buzz of conversation flowed around them, but they stood in their own small bubble. Oliver cleared his throat. "Listen," he began softly, "I'm heading to Seattle next week. I'm scouting a potential philanthropic development, low-income housing near the waterfront. I'd love for you to come, give your input, and Aurora too, if you want. It could be a mini-trip, combine business and a bit of sightseeing. If you're comfortable." Celia hesitated. Traveling with Oliver felt like a leap beyond their current arrangement, but she also felt the pull, an opportunity for Aurora to see more of the world and for them to test if they could truly function as a supportive unit. "I'll think about it," she said. Her voice wavered, a sign that she was seriously considering it. He smiled tentatively. "That's all I can ask for." Later that night, after the celebration wound down, Celia walked the quiet streets with Aurora in hand and Oliver at her side. They passed a mural depicting city life, bright colors swirling into each other, reminding Celia of her early days of love and heartbreak. As Aurora skipped ahead, Oliver asked, "Have you given more thought to our future? Yours? Mine? Aurora's?" She paused under a street lamp, the glow illuminating the concern in her eyes. "It's complicated," she admitted. "I'm still afraid of letting you in too close. But I also see how happy Aurora is around you." Oliver gently reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I want to be here for both of you, in whatever capacity you'll allow, as a father, and maybe, someday, as more." Celia's heart pounded. She remembered the quiet nights in a lonely apartment, the tears, the resentment. But she also recalled the last half year of slow, careful repair. "I'm not promising anything beyond co-parenting, but I'm open to seeing if we can rebuild what was lost. With time," he nodded, swallowing the emotion in his throat. Together, they caught up to Aurora, who pointed at the painted silhouettes of families on the mural. The irony wasn't lost on Celia. 5 years ago, Oliver had obliterated the notion of family. Now, he was standing here, humbly asking to be part of one. The structure of trust they were forging was still fragile, but each day it gained another layer of strength. Walking on, Celia realized that sometimes heartbreak can carve out deeper compassion, that forgiveness, while not guaranteed, can emerge from genuine remorse. She saw in Oliver a man changed by regret, eager to invest not just money, but also heart, into a life he nearly threw away. Maybe, she thought, redemption stories don't always end with a clean slate, but they can begin with small, honest steps toward healing and love. A life shattered by betrayal can sometimes be pieced back together, one courageous step at a time. For Oliver Beaumont, losing everything he once held, dear, his marriage, his fatherhood, and the trust of the woman he loved, opened his eyes to the hollowness of blind ambition. Through sincerity, humility, and a fierce dedication to the daughter he almost never knew, he began to rebuild the foundation of a family he once cast aside. If this story touched you, if you found hope in its message that forgiveness and redemption can flourish even after heartbreak, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to continue crafting tales that delve into the complexities of love, regret, and the resilience of the human heart. Stay tuned for more stories that remind us it's never too late to embrace what truly matters.
Do you believe that walls can talk? That sometimes the very bricks around us hold stories too raw, too tangled to speak aloud? This is the story of a man who shattered hearts and trust in one swift stroke, erasing his unborn baby's name from the nursery wall. Little did he know that fate would carve that same name into the towering facade of his company's newest building. Love, ambition, betrayal, and redemption twist through every corridor of this tale. Buckle in for a journey that delves into hidden pasts and uncertain futures, where every character holds a key to a devastating secret. The late afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of Alexander Haven's corner office at Horizon Global Ventures. The golden light cast a halo on the gleaming awards and plaques that lined the walls, each one echoing the success that the Haven family had worked generations to achieve. Alexander, A tall, imposing figure with silver-streaked hair at just 38 leaned back in his leather chair, drumming his fingers on the polished mahogany desk. His gaze cold and distant, fixed on an ornate pen, an anniversary gift from his wife, Cassandra. In that moment, the pen symbolized everything that had once been simple and hopeful in his life. Now it only served as a reminder of secrets he had kept the people he had hurt. He had always prided himself on his ability to control every variable in his life. But as the afternoon light drifted across the office, he realized control had slipped through his fingers the very day he found out Cassandra was pregnant. They had never spoken much about children before. Sure, there were the passing fantasies of a large family, or a small one, depending on the day, but their careers always took center stage. Cassandra was a brilliant architect who had designed luxury estates from London to Bali. It was her passion, her calling. She had come from a humble background, and each building she created was a testament to how far she'd climbed. Alexander's phone buzzed. The name on the caller ID read Cassandra, and he felt a rush of guilt swirl inside him. She'd called 5 times that day, and each call had gone to voicemail. Now, perhaps out of reflex, he answered. Cassandra's voice was tight. She used his pet name, though the warmth that usually accompanied it was missing. "We need to talk. I'm at the house." Alexander swallowed. "I'll be there soon." He left the office without a backward glance, ignoring the stares of his employees as he stalked past glass-walled conference rooms. He drove to their estate on the outskirts of the city, a sprawling piece of land overshadowed by centuries-old oaks. The driveway alone was half a mile of winding pavement lined with perfectly manicured hedges. When he finally stepped inside, an uneasy silence welcomed him. Years ago, upon first acquiring the property, he and Cassandra had dreamed of filling those halls with laughter, children's voices, dinner parties, new memories. They even had a room at the end of the upstairs corridor, designated as a nursery, its walls once adorned with gentle pastel colors. A rocking chair Cassandra's grandmother had passed down, and a small name plaque they'd chosen for their soon-to-be child, the child who would never come. He found Cassandra in the nursery. The walls were now blank, the rocking chair shoved into a corner. She stood with her back to him, arms crossed, shoulders trembling. "What have you done?" Her voice was steady, yet thick with pain. Alexander closed his eyes for a moment. He had instructed the staff to repaint the nursery and remove all traces of the name they had once agreed upon Adrian. It had been a reckless, impulsive decision, one made out of heartbreak and the fear of being haunted by a memory of what could have been. Losing the baby had hit him in a place he never knew existed, so he did the one thing that made sense at the time: erase everything that reminded him of it. Cassandra turned, revealing tears clinging to her lashes. "We never even talked about it," she whispered. "You just had them remove his name, like he never existed." "I couldn't stand it," Alexander said, his voice low. "Couldn't stand walking by this room and seeing that name every day. It hurt too much." She stared at him, eyes glassy with betrayal. "Hurt too much? For whom? For you?" She took a trembling breath. "Because I still dream of him at night. I wake up and forget he's gone. And now there's nothing left of him at all, except the emptiness." His throat burned. He wanted to hold her, to promise her it would be okay. But the chasm between them felt too wide. Cassandra brushed past him, leaving only the scent of her expensive perfume and heartbreak in the air. He stood in the barren nursery, haunted by the absence of the name that used to be there. He thought about how that single act of painting over a memory had torn him and Cassandra further apart, and he wondered if they would ever find their way back. Yet destiny had other plans. The name he'd buried was about to resurface in a place he'd never expect, etched in stone on the facade of a building that would soon reshape both their lives. Long before he met Cassandra, Alexander Haven was raised in a world of opulence. The Havens were a known name in Massachusetts, their family wealth tracing back to old shipping lines that made fortunes in the 19th century. Over time, their empire evolved into real estate investment banking and eventually high-tech ventures. Alexander's father, Gordon Haven, was a formidable presence, meticulous, shrewd, and intimidating. He had raised Alexander with the mantra, legacy. First everything else, second. While this instilled in Alexander a relentless drive for success, it also planted deep insecurities. He had grown to view relationships as stepping stones or potential pitfalls. Even in personal matters, he measured the risk and potential reward. Growing up, he rarely visited friends' homes, almost never had a slumber party or carefree evening away from the watchful eyes of his father and their entourage of staff. He was groomed for leadership, taught to win at any cost. Cassandra Delgado was nothing like the women in Alexander's social circle. A self-made prodigy, her architectural breakthroughs in eco-friendly designs caught the attention of environmentalists, real estate moguls, and philanthropists alike, including Bill and Melinda Gates, who admired her commitment to sustainability. Some whispered that she was on the short list to design a new philanthropic research center that Mark Zuckerberg was rumored to be funding. No one dared question her brilliance. She had an almost mystical ability to see aesthetics and engineering as two halves of the same whole. They met at a fundraising gala for a children's hospital in Boston. Cassandra was there to pitch a new pediatric ward design concept, one that would integrate nature-inspired spaces to comfort children during treatments. Alexander, ironically, was there to represent the Haven family's charitable giving, something that always gave them positive publicity, though the real philanthropic intentions were sometimes overshadowed by the press releases. Their connection was instant, and it went beyond physical attraction. Alexander, drawn to her fiery determination, found himself opening up in ways he never had. Cassandra, for her part, saw in him a man who yearned for genuine passion outside his business fortress. They talked about innovative building designs, philanthropic aspirations, and the ways architecture could shape a better future. Where Alexander was methodical, Cassandra was creative. Where he built walls, she tore them down. They married quickly, too quickly, some said, and formed what Boston's high society regarded as the power couple of the decade. At first, Alexander integrated Cassandra into the Haven empire, seamlessly trusting her insight to innovate in areas where the family's vision had grown stale. In turn, she reveled in the resources the Haven family's wealth provided, designing experimental complexes, advanced living facilities, and eco-conscious high-rises. Yet as the months wore on, Alexander's father Gordon began to question Cassandra's long-term loyalty. She wasn't from their world. Old money had a certain set of unspoken rules, and Cassandra wasn't one to follow them blindly. Over time, tensions rose. Cassandra refused to let the Haven name overshadow her personal identity. She pressed for her own brand recognition in architectural circles, which Gordon felt threatened the collective family prestige. Alexander stood uncomfortably between his father and his wife, often appeasing one at the expense of the other. Then came the pregnancy. For a moment, everything looked bright. Both Alexander and Cassandra believed that introducing a new life into their family might unify them in a deeper way. Gordon, too, softened at the idea of a grandchild to continue the Haven line. The baby would be named Adrian, after Cassandra's beloved grandfather, who had encouraged her to pursue architecture before he passed. The pregnancy also aligned with a major business venture. Alexander was spearheading an enormous real estate project in downtown Boston. He'd collaborated with City Hall to turn a derelict block into a modern corporate park, one that would bear the Haven name and stand as a testament to the family's ongoing influence. But fate was cruel. Complications led to a tragic miscarriage. Cassandra spiraled into grief, and Alexander retreated behind his stoic walls, shutting out his own pain. It was easier for him to bury it beneath new projects, negotiations, and deals than to face the magnitude of what they lost. And so the nursery remained untouched, a silent reminder, until the day he decided to erase Adrian's name from its walls. The heartbreak in Cassandra's eyes that afternoon was not something that could be easily fixed. Their once tightly woven tapestry of ambition and love was unraveling. Little did either of them know just how violently the threads would be pulled apart by events lurking on the horizon. Time marched on. Work never stopped at Horizon Global Ventures. The real estate project that Alexander had been orchestrating, officially dubbed the Haven Complex, was inching closer to its grand unveiling. This multi-building campus promised to revitalize downtown Boston, merging state-of-the-art office spaces with green rooftops, large communal parks, and advanced energy-efficient technologies. Cassandra had contributed some early design concepts before her grief took her away from many responsibilities, and Alexander had allowed her that distance, not wanting to impose further stress. One crisp morning, Alexander's mind was spinning through a dozen tasks as he stepped out of his black SUV in front of the nearly completed Haven complex. He was there to do a final walkthrough before the massive media event scheduled 2 weeks later. Broad columns flanked an enormous plaza in the center of the development, lined with glass-clad towers that reached skyward. The sweet tang of fresh cement and the buzz of construction filled the air. His team of architects and investors trailed behind him, bustling with excitement to show off the progress. Alexander nodded politely, scanning the site with a practiced gaze. They crossed the plaza and approached the main tower, which soared upwards in shimmering glass and steel. A large ceremonial wall next to the entrance was reserved for a special unveiling, an inscription dedicated to the vision and future of the Haven legacy. Rumor had it that Alexander intended to carve a quote or place an emblem to commemorate the family's dedication to progress. Just as they were about to enter the tower, the site manager Miriam Kelly hurried up to Alexander with an odd look on her face. "Mr. Haven," she said, pushing her black-rimmed glasses up her nose. "We've discovered something on the decorative facade. It wasn't part of the official design, but it appears to be etched deep into the stone. It will take significant effort and time to remove." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "Etched like graffiti?" "Not exactly. It's a name, sir." She paused, swallowing hard. "Adrian." In an instant, Alexander's heart dropped. He stiffened. The mere mention of that name here in the heart of his largest development felt like a cosmic punch to the gut. "How did it get her there?" he demanded, voice taut. "We're still investigating," she replied, voice hushed. "It's small, but it's chiseled in a way that's deliberate, with actual stone carving techniques. Not just some random tagger with a spray can. It's on a corner of the decorative stone panel just to the right of the building's main entrance. We can remove it, but it will leave a visible patch unless we replace the entire panel, which might take weeks to reorder and install. A swirl of memories and guilt flooded Alexander. He could still see Cassandra's tear-stained eyes the day he repainted the nursery walls. Why here, why now? Was this some act of sabotage, or was it a bizarre coincidence? He turned to his team, feigning control. Gather the crew. Let's see this for ourselves. They walked around to the side of the building near the main entrance. Indeed, on the lower corner of a heavy stone block, in ornate script no more than 3 inches tall, he saw the name Adrian. It glinted in the morning light, as if mocking him. The cut was smooth, professionally done. Alexander felt as though the ghost of his child had found a way to appear at the very heart of his business empire. The crowd of engineers and project managers murmured, but none dared speak the name aloud again. Everyone felt the tension rippling from Alexander. Finally, he cleared his throat. Get the best stonemason to see if it can be carefully removed without replacing the entire block, he said, scanning their faces. And I want a full investigation. Check security footage, see who came through here. This is private property. There must be cameras. Miriam nodded. Yes, Mr. Haven. As the group filed away, Alexander stared at the etched name. Questions churned in his mind. Was someone trying to torment him? Or was it Cassandra, grappling with the memory of Adrian in her own anguished way? He knew she was a talented designer, but stone carving was not her skill set. Still, doubt flickered. He traced the letters with his fingertips, fighting the tightness in his chest. Adrian, a child who never got a chance at life, but who somehow kept reappearing. No matter how hard he tried to erase the name, it found its way back. The day after discovering the name on the building, Alexander hardly slept. Anxiety wrapped around him like a vice fueled by a new wave of tension at home. Cassandra, though physically present at their estate, felt emotionally distant. She had withdrawn to her personal design studio behind the house, offering no explanation for her absences or solitary nights. At the office, Alexander was met with an undercurrent of gossip. Employees whispered in hallways, exchanging glances when he passed. He knew they suspected something, that the etched name must hold personal significance. The Haven Empire might have soared on the wings of success, but it also flew through corridors built on secrets and half-truths. Desperate for answers, Alexander plunged himself into the security footage from the site. Along with Miriam and a small group of trusted IT specialists, he spent hours scrubbing through camera angles. They found little out of the ordinary, no suspicious intruders, no after-hours trespassers. The building's exterior cameras had either not been angled to that specific patch of stone or were obscured by scaffolding. It was possible that someone had hidden in a blind spot, but a near-total blank didn't satisfy him. He was certain there had to be more. Someone must have had both motive and access. Then a glitch on one camera's timestamp caught his eye. A short segment, no more than 15 minutes, was missing from the official logs. He turned to the IT specialist, a wiry young man named Conrad. "You see this?" Alexander said, pointing to the gap. "We're missing footage between 2:30 and 2:45 a.m. last Tuesday." Conrad tapped on his keyboard, sweat forming at his temples. "It looks like a forced corruption in the data. Someone with advanced knowledge of our systems might have done this deliberately." Alexander's fury rose. He felt his hands clench into fists. "We pay for state-of-the-art security, yet here we are. I want a list of everyone who had access to these cameras that night." Conrad nodded. "Of course, Mr. Haven." As the day wore on, a handful of potential suspects emerged: employees, contractors, or external tech consultants who had the clearance to handle or manipulate the security feeds. But none stood out as having a personal vendetta to carve Adrian into the building's facade. As far as Alexander knew, that name and its significance were known only to family and a few close friends. Just before evening, he slipped away from the office to pay an unannounced visit to Cassandra's personal design studio. It was a minimalist glass annex behind their main residence, filled with sprawling drafting tables, half-finished models, and large windows overlooking a secluded garden. He found her hunched over a blueprint, wearing a plain black turtleneck and leggings. She barely acknowledged him when he stepped inside. "We need to talk," he said, his voice gentler than he intended. The tension between them was suffocating, but anger wouldn't help. She shrugged, maintaining focus on the blueprint. "About what?" He took a step closer. The name etched on the new building. Adrian. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you? She stood up slowly, her eyes narrowed in astonishment. "What makes you think I would do that?" Alexander exhaled. "I'm not accusing you of anything, but you've been distant, and I know how important Adrian's memory is to you. This could be some act of grief." She paced across the studio, frustration evident. "So because I'm grieving, I'd break into your construction site in the dead of night and carve our baby's name on stone. Is that really what you think of me, Alexander?" He winced at the use of his full name. "I just need answers." Cassandra's eyes brimmed with tears. "I can't even stand looking at that building. It reminds me of what you did to the nursery, wiping away Adrian's name like he never existed. I'm not stepping foot near your precious Haven complex, let alone defacing it." Alexander stared at the floor. Guilt and suspicion clashed in his chest. He wanted to believe her. Over the years, she'd proven herself to be honorable and true, even if they were drifting apart. She picked up a small clay model she was working on, a conceptual piece for a pediatric clinic in Honduras. "This is how I honor Adrian," she said softly, tapping the model. "By designing places that help children. Because that was our dream, wasn't it? To do something meaningful for families. That dream died a little the day you repainted that room." "Stung?" Alexander nodded, unable to muster a response. He turned to leave, pausing at the door. "If you remember anything that might help, or if you see anything suspicious, you'll tell me." She nodded, though her expression made it clear she believed if Alexander really cared about her, he'd know how deeply he'd wounded her. He left the studio feeling colder than when he'd arrived. Over the next week, Alexander's frustrations mounted. His father Gordon, who had been conspicuously absent for months, supposedly overseas on business, unexpectedly returned. Gordon always had a knack for appearing at the worst possible time. One evening, he summoned Alexander to the Old Haven mansion in Beacon Hill, the historic family seat that Alexander had avoided since his childhood. Alexander arrived to find Gordon waiting in the study, a cavernous room lined with dusty tomes and antique furniture that smelled like old leather. 2 crystal glasses of expensive cognac sat on the table untouched. Son Gordon said, his deep voice echoing. "I've been hearing rumors. Something about the name Adrian carved into your new building. Care to explain?" Alexander's jaw clenched. He'd never told his father the baby's name. That was a conversation he and Cassandra had reserved for themselves, at least until the time was right. But perhaps gossip traveled faster than respect for privacy in Boston's elite circles. "Nothing to explain." Alexander replied, forcing calm. It's vandalism, and I'm handling it. Gordon's expression was measured. I understand losing a child is hard, but you need to keep your head in the game. The city is watching, the press is circling. You're set to be the face of this grand opening. Anything that smells of scandal or strife will tarnish the Haven name. Alexander's shoulders tensed. Is that all you care about? The name not once have you asked how Cassandra or I are coping. Gordon's straightened lips pressed into a thin line. Grief is personal. I'm not your therapist, but I do know the family legacy must remain intact. If you can't manage to keep it that way, I will step in. The threat lingered in the room like a noxious gas. Alexander took a long sip of the cognac, letting the burn steady his nerves. He was used to his father's cold approach to family matters. Showing vulnerability in front of Gordon was akin to bleeding in shark-infested waters. That won't be necessary, Alexander said, determined. I've got it under control. Gordon nodded, but the glint in his eyes said otherwise. I trust you'll do what must be done. Their conversation ended abruptly. Alexander left, feeling the old mansion's oppressive weight crushing him. He hated that place. It reminded him of lonely childhood nights locked away in a stiff bedroom, while tutors and nannies drilled into him that everything was about legacy and image. Back at the estate, he found Cassandra's design studio empty. A quick text revealed she had gone to New York for a last-minute architecture symposium. In the past, she would have told him about any travel plans. He knew she was pulling away, forging her independence again, and it both frightened and angered him. Days marched on with no new leads about the carved name. The IT team found no conclusive evidence, and the stonemasons insisted it would cost tens of thousands of dollars to fix the etched stone, and that was assuming the project schedule could accommodate such a significant delay. With the grand opening fast approaching, Alexander faced a choice: reveal the name at the event, and risk a media circus, or patch it in a rushed manner, leaving an obvious scar on what was meant to be a pristine facade. He tried to push it from his mind by immersing himself in finalizing the details of the opening ceremony. He'd invited a roster of high-profile personalities, local politicians, celebrities, and philanthropic figures, even hoping to secure a cameo from Warren Buffett, who was rumored to be investing in a sustainable housing initiative. The event in many ways was a tribute to the Haven Empire's commitment to the future. Yet as the big day loomed, Alexander couldn't shake the eerie feeling that the name Adrian was more than a mere vandalism or cosmic coincidence. It felt like a reckoning for the callous way he had tried to paint over the nursery, to bury the sorrow too quickly. At last, the morning of the grand opening arrived. A crisp autumn breeze whipped through downtown Boston, sending leaves swirling around the newly laid plaza. Technicians bustled, finalizing the stage and sound systems. Towering banners bearing the Haven family crest fluttered from newly installed flagpoles. Alexander had spent the previous night practicing his speech in front of a mirror. He stood now backstage, wearing a tailored charcoal suit. Journalists with cameras angled for the best shot. Officials from City Hall mingled, and a small band rehearsed soft classical tunes. Despite the outward pomp, his mind was a tempest. He glanced at his phone, hoping to see a text from Cassandra, but there was nothing. She was back in Boston, but had not confirmed her attendance. He drew a slow breath, stepping onto the stage, as the announcer introduced him with a flourish. His speech began smoothly enough, praising Boston's heritage, the dedication of the City Council, the employees of Horizon Global Ventures, and the bright future symbolized by the Haven complex. He had a practiced way with words, honed by years of press conferences and philanthropic galas. Then his eyes caught a glimpse of someone unexpected in the crowd, Cassandra. She stood at the back, arms folded, her expression unreadable. For a moment his voice faltered, but he forged ahead. Applause peppered his speech. Lights flashed, cameras rolled. He concluded with a statement on legacy, how the Haven family strived to build not just buildings, but also hope for the next generation. The audience clapped politely. Alexander turned, motioning toward the large drape that covered the ceremonial inscription on the wall near the building's main entrance. As the drape fell away, it revealed the words, "For innovation, for progress, for the future." The crowd erupted in cheers, but the stone just beneath still carried the small yet haunting name, Adrian, now partially obscured by a subtle attempt at patchwork. The name remained legible up close, and soon curious murmurs rippled through the attendees. The tension in Alexander's stomach coiled. He stepped down from the podium, greeting officials and exchanging forced smiles. Media swarmed, some noticing the strange etching on the stone. He braced for the questions, though he prayed none would come. Yet they did. "Mr. Haven, can you comment on the name etched beneath your new inscription?" Alexander stiffened, but forced a measured smile. "We had a minor issue with vandalism. It's already being addressed." Before more questions could swarm, an older man approached someone Alexander recognized from his father's entourage, Charles Deering, a retired advisor who had served the Haven family for decades. His grey eyes flickered with concern. "We should speak privately," Charles said, guiding Alexander away from the crowd. They slipped into a side passage of the building's lobby. Smooth marble floors reflected the overhead lights. Charles wasted no time. "I believe I have information about who might have carved that name," he said. "I didn't speak sooner because I wasn't entirely sure, but new evidence came to my attention." Alexander's pulse quickened. "Go on." Charles fished an envelope from inside his coat. "Someone sent me still images from a CCTV feed, dated the night the carving must have happened. However, they're from an external camera across the street, not your official site cameras." Alexander took the envelope and peered at the black and white stills. The images showed a figure in a hooded jacket near the building's entrance. The figure stooped in the exact spot where the name was later found. Despite the angle and darkness, it was clearly not Cassandra. The person appeared stockier, with broader shoulders. He flipped through more images. One partial side view, though grainy, made his chest tighten. The face was partially visible, just enough to recognize him as Elias Ward, a childhood friend of Alexander's who had once worked at Horizon Global Ventures, but left under tense circumstances. Elias's family had once been in business with the Havens, but a few years back, Elias had been ousted amid a scandal that implicated him in a questionable real estate deal. Alexander hadn't spoken to him since. He looked up at Charles. "Elias. Why would he do this?" Charles frowned. "He's harbored resentment for a long time. It's possible he knew about your baby's name. He might have learned it from staff or overheard it from your father's lips." Shaken, Alexander clutched the photos. It made sense in a twisted way. Elias was cunning, and if he wanted to strike at Alexander's psyche, carving Adrian into the building was a cruel but potent way to do it. "But how did he manage to force a corruption in our security footage?" Alexander asked. "He's an IT expert, or at least he has connections," Charles replied. "He could have bribed someone." Rage simmered in Alexander's veins. Elias had taken a private tragedy and warped it into a weapon. The whole fiasco with the building was to undermine Alexander, to remind him that no matter how high you climb, your vulnerabilities can still be used against you. Charles placed a hand on Alexander's shoulder. Be careful. Confronting him without evidence could be risky, but at least you now know who you're dealing with. Alexander nodded, pulses of adrenaline flooding his system. The revelation brought no solace. If anything, it deepened the emotional turmoil. He glanced toward the exit, spotting Cassandra watching him from afar. Her eyes flicked from him to the envelope in his hand, curiosity evident. He couldn't confront Elias publicly, not at that moment. But he had a sinking feeling that the worst was yet to come. That evening, after the event ended and the crowd dispersed, Alexander found Cassandra in the estate's expansive kitchen, rummaging for a late-night snack. The overhead light illuminated her exhaustion. She looked up as he entered the question in her gaze, wordless but clear. He set the envelope on the marble island. It was Elias Ward. She blinked, confused. Elias? I haven't heard that name in ages. He carved Adrian's name on the building. Alexander nodded, pulling out the still images and laying them before her. He had access knowledge and a grudge. It's all here. She studied the images, her face darkening. I still don't understand his motive. Revenge. I had to let him go from Horizon a few years back, after he'd jeopardized one of our major deals. He's held a grudge ever since. Cassandra let out a slow breath. So in his twisted mind, your grief became his ammunition. That's beyond cruel. Alexander reached for her hand, longing for a connection they'd both neglected. I'm sorry. For how I handled everything with Adrian. For how I erased his name from the nursery. None of this justifies that. But I want you to know I regret it. She didn't pull away. I know you hurt too, Alec, but it felt like you tried to wash him out of our lives the moment it got too painful. He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. I was wrong. They stood in quiet sorrow, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. For the first time in what felt like ages, they seemed united by the same sense of loss. Finally, Cassandra spoke. What are you going to do about Elias? Alexander inhaled. Confront him, but carefully. For now, I'll gather more definitive proof. Maybe we can keep it out of the courts. I just want him to understand there are consequences. Cassandra set the photos aside. I'll help however I can. It wasn't a declaration of forgiveness or a renewal of vows, but it was a step one that made Alexander's chest loosen just a fraction. 2 days later, Alexander received a cryptic text on his personal phone. We should talk. I have information you don't want made public. The bar at the Old Derby on Salem Street, 9 p.m. Come alone. It was unsigned, but the message felt like a signature of its own. Elias. Alexander hesitated. This was precisely the kind of clandestine meeting that could lead to a confrontation. Still, he needed to settle the issue. The swirl of rumors around the Haven complex had grown. Several local blogs were speculating about the mysterious name. He couldn't afford for the gossip to infect the project's reputation further, or to exploit Cassandra's private grief. At 9 p.m. sharp, Alexander arrived at the Old Derby, a dimly lit bar with dark wood booths and an ancient, dusty chandelier. No sign announced who owned it, but it was an open secret that the place was a hangout for shady deals and hush-hush conversations. He spotted Elias in a corner booth, swirling a half-empty glass of whiskey. Shorter than Alexander, but built sturdier. Elias had a face etched by cynicism. He smirked when he saw Alexander approach. "I knew you'd come," Elias said, motioning for Alexander to sit. Alexander slid into the booth, crossing his arms. "You've got a lot of nerve. Carving Adrian's name. My baby's name into my building to prove some twisted point." Elias raised a brow. "It got your attention, didn't it?" Alexander bristled. "What do you want?" Elias sipped his whiskey. "An apology. Compensation. A chance at redemption. There was a time we were close friends, Alexander. I grew up with you. We planned on conquering the world together, but you kicked me to the curb without a second thought." "You committed fraud," Alexander hissed. "I had no choice." "You always have a choice," Elias corrected. "And I might have some interesting pieces of information that, if leaked, could shine a less than rosy light on your precious Haven empire. Not to mention some personal details about your marriage." Alexander leaned forward, his eyes aflame. "Is that a threat?" "It's business," Elias said, with an indifferent shrug. "But I'll consider it a personal favor if you reinstate me into Horizon Global Ventures in a senior capacity. Give me a stake in one of your next big projects. Let me back in the game." Alexander stared at him, a swirl of disgust and pity roiling. "You'd stoop this low?" Elias raised his glass in a mock toast. "Come on. We both know what your father taught us. Success is about leverage. I have leverage now." Alexander stood. "I won't be blackmailed." Elias shrugged, unbothered. "Then you can watch me dismantle your carefully curated world piece by piece. I wonder how the press would react if they learned the real reason behind that carved name. Or if certain financial transactions were put into public record." Alexander's fists clenched, but he forced himself to walk away. Engaging in violence or an open confrontation here would only complicate matters further. As he left the bar, Elias's eyes burned into his back. Outside, the chilly air stung his cheeks, matching the fury that flared in him. Back at Horizon Global Ventures, Alexander convened a small circle of trusted advisors: Miriam Kelly, Charles Deering, and an old ally, Jessica Freeman, the firm's head of compliance. They pored over files detailing Elias's previous projects, searching for any vulnerabilities or potential wrongdoing that Alexander could use as a counter-leverage. An exasperated sigh slipped from Alexander as they found only minimal leads. Elias's misdeeds were well documented from the prior scandal, but he had skillfully wiped most records beyond that. The man was cunning, leaving little behind that could incriminate him now. Cassandra, too, joined the meetings for the first time since the miscarriage. She offered a fresh perspective, though her role was mostly supportive. Alexander felt a glimmer of their old partnership, the synergy that had once made them unstoppable. Late one evening, while scanning the older architectural plans for the Haven complex, Cassandra found a cryptic note scrawled in the margins, a note referencing a specialized vault in the sub-basement designed for data storage, one that Elias had insisted on implementing when he was still with the company. "This sub-basement vault," she said, pushing the plan toward Alexander. "Do you remember authorizing it?" He furrowed his brow, scanning the document. "Not specifically. Elias was heading security protocols back then. He might have snuck it into the design." Charles leaned in, adjusting his reading glasses. "I recall some mention of a state-of-the-art data center, but we never used it. The project was scrapped after Elias left. Cassandra tapped her pen on the blueprint. If Elias had free rein to design it, maybe he stored something there, some leverage." Miriam nodded. "He might be counting on no one remembering this vault exists." It's possible he's stashed files there that he can threaten to reveal. Alexander stood. We're going down there. Under the cover of night, Alexander, Cassandra. Miriam and Charles slipped into the Haven complex. They made their way to the sub-basement, guided by the dusty blueprint and the flicker of overhead fluorescent lights. Occasionally, a distant hum of machinery echoed through the concrete corridors. At the far end of a deserted hallway, they found the entrance to the vault, a nondescript metal door with an electronic keypad. Miriam produced a small hacking tool, courtesy of their IT department. She set to work, sweat beading on her forehead, until a faint click announced success. Inside, they discovered a chamber lined with racks meant for servers that never arrived. The air was musty thick with disuse. It took them a while to find anything unusual until Cassandra noticed a steel cabinet in a corner. It was locked, but with a traditional padlock instead of advanced electronics. Charles pried it open with a crowbar. Inside sat a single external hard drive labeled HGV Archives. Next to it lay a dusty stack of documents. Their hearts pounded in unison. Alexander carefully lifted the drive. This must be Elias's stash. He rummaged through the papers, spotting spreadsheets, old memos, and references to questionable deals. Some were legitimate business records, others had confidential stamped across them in thick red letters. The final sheet in the pile drew his eye a ledger listing large sums of money, moving between shell companies, including suspicious references to a Delphi Holdings, a name Alexander had never encountered. They exchanged wary glances, suspecting that Elias had compiled these documents to blackmail the Haven family or any business partners. The question was, who was the real target? Miriam frowned. He might have documented wrongdoing in the Haven Empire, possibly your father's older deals, maybe your father's or your grandfather's, or he might have forged some parts to create false accusations. Either way, it's a time bomb. Cassandra brushed her fingers over the ledger. Could it be tied to your father's secret expansions overseas? I always found it strange how hush-hush Gordon was about certain properties in Europe and Asia. Alexander looked grim. This is more extensive than I imagined. My father might have skeletons buried in places I never knew existed. Charles cleared his throat. We should get these files analyzed, sort out what's real. If some of these are legitimate records, your father could face legal trouble. A wave of fatigue washed over Alexander. Elias had set a trap. Possibly Gordon was complicit in questionable dealings. If so, exposing this could shatter the entire Haven Foundation. But burying the truth would only empower Elias's blackmail attempts. After carefully photographing the documents, they left the vault, locking it behind them. Each step up the sub-basement stairs felt heavier. Alexander's mind raced with potential scenarios, from criminal investigations to media firestorms. But overshadowing all of it was the name Adrian. How the memory of his unborn son had been twisted into the crowbar that pried open these hidden secrets. The next morning, Alexander summoned Gordon to his estate, producing the files and confronting him directly. In Cassandra's presence, the older man examined the documents without betraying much emotion. Then he looked up, eyes icy. Elias was always a snake, he said simply. And you've proven yourself naive for letting him collect these. Alexander's voice shook with outrage. Don't deflect. These deals, offshore shell companies, questionable partnerships. This is bigger than Elias. Did you sign off on all this? Gordon's jaw tightened. I did what had to be done to keep our family's fortune intact. Do you have any idea the lengths I went to ensure the Havens remained powerful? We live in a harsh world, Alexander. Sometimes that means forging alliances and sealing deals in ways that aren't publicly palatable. Cassandra's hand flew to her mouth. That's your justification for money laundering bribery. Whatever else is in those documents, Gordon slammed his fist on the table. Do not judge me. Everything I did was for the family. I built an empire for you, Alexander. And here you are, unraveling it all because some ungrateful friend decided to toss around petty threats. Alexander inhaled sharply. Petty threats. He carved Adrian's name on our building to torment us. Don't you understand what this means to Cassandra and me? Gordon's gaze flicked toward Cassandra, momentarily softening. I'm sorry about your child. Truly. But from a business standpoint, Alexander cut him off. Stop. You can't reduce everything to business. This is our family. A tension-soaked silence stretched. Eventually, Cassandra intervened. We need to decide what to do with Elias and with these files. If the media gets hold of this, your entire legacy is at risk. Gordon's lips thinned. Offer him what he wants within reason, and bury this. The Haven name must remain unscathed. Alexander bristled. No. I'm done paying for blackmail. We need to handle this differently. Then handle it, Gordon said, rising from his seat. But don't expect me to take the blame if you fail. He left in a swirl of expensive cologne and bitterness. Alexander clenched his jaw. Cassandra placed a tentative hand on his shoulder. We'll figure it out, she said. But even as she spoke, fear tinged her voice. Days passed, and the pressure mounted. Alexander and Cassandra moved through the estate like ghosts, each lost in a storm of thoughts. Cassandra tried to break the silence more than once, but Alexander was too consumed with forging a strategy to defeat Elias without letting the blackmail files go public. One evening, as a cold rain battered the windows, Cassandra found Alexander in the study, staring at old family photos. He fixated on one of them, a shot of him and Cassandra in front of the nursery, just after she announced she was pregnant, both beaming with unrestrained joy. It felt like a lifetime ago. She sat beside him, sliding an arm around his shoulders. For the first time in weeks, he leaned into her warmth, letting out a shaky breath. I keep trying to hold everything together, he whispered, voice hoarse. But maybe it's time to let it fall apart, so we can rebuild honestly. Cassandra hesitated, her fingers stroking his hair. What do you mean? I mean, maybe we come clean. Let the authorities see those documents, see if there's wrongdoing, and if it implicates my father, so be it. I can't keep living in this twisted circle of blackmail and secrets. A tear escaped Cassandra's eye. That's a huge risk, Alec. It could destroy the Haven name. He swallowed. Our child was destroyed by secrets, too. I never told you how I truly felt after we lost Adrian, how broken I was. I tried to bury it, and it only caused more pain. I don't want to bury anything anymore. Cassandra's tears flowed freely. She cupped his cheeks, searching his gaze. I've hated you for wiping out Adrian's name, for ignoring my grief. But part of me knew you were doing it out of your own heartbreak. I just couldn't face it. Maybe I needed to hate someone. Alexander held her close. I'm sorry. Truly. I wish I could redo it all, but this is our only chance to make something right. If I have to risk the Haven name for it, I will. They held each other for a long time in silence, the patter of rain mixing with the gentle hum of their quiet sobs. Bolstered by Cassandra's support, Alexander arranged a meeting with an attorney experienced in corporate wrongdoing and whistleblowing cases. Cassandra insisted on joining, placing her own name on the line if it meant forging a path toward honesty. The attorney, Janet Huang, listened intently as they recounted the story. Elias's blackmail, the suspicious documents, Gordon's potential involvement. Janet tapped her pen on a legal pad, her brow furrowed. "You could absolutely go to the authorities with this," Janet said, "but the repercussions will be swift. If your father is named, the press will devour the scandal. Your business empire could face asset freezes, investor pullouts. Worst case, you might be forced out of Horizon altogether." Alexander nodded grimly. "We understand. But if we let Elias hold this over us, we'll never be free." Janet leaned forward, eyes intense. "There is another approach. We can compile the documents properly, highlight any legitimate wrongdoing, and strike a deal with the authorities, cooperate fully in exchange for leniency, especially if you personally had no knowledge or involvement. Then you use that official stance to face Elias. If he tries to leak anything else, it'll either be old news or overshadowed by your proactive cooperation." Cassandra looked at Alexander, and he squeezed her hand. "Let's do it," he said. A week later, everything unfolded in a maelstrom. Alexander handed over the stash of documents to federal investigators. Gordon, upon learning of his son's plan, erupted in fury, threatening to disown Alexander and disclaim him from the Haven fortune. In a heated exchange, Alexander retorted that no legacy was worth sacrificing integrity. The media storm was immediate. Headlines blared, "Haven Empire under investigation." Stock prices wobbled. Enemies came out of the woodwork, piling on claims and rumors. Some of the documents did implicate Gordon in shady overseas dealings, though the extent of criminal liability remained uncertain. Elias, furious that Alexander had circumvented his blackmail, attempted to leak additional documents, but they were dismissed as either already in possession of investigators or irrelevant. The worst damage fell on Gordon's personal reputation. Alexander stood poised to lose a sizable chunk of the family wealth, but ironically his public image remained relatively unscathed. In some corners, he was hailed as a man who chose the moral high ground. Cassandra stood by him, offering unwavering support through the barrage of cameras and microphones. In the midst of chaos, they found themselves drawing closer, forging a new intimacy shaped by shared adversity and honesty. Amid the swirling fallout, Alexander decided to rectify his greatest regret. While Cassandra was away at a charity event, he snuck into the old nursery. Since the day he painted over the walls, the room had remained cold, empty, and lifeless. He reopened the sealed cans of paint, carefully mixing soft blues and greys, the same palette they had originally chosen. Next, with trembling hands, he painted the name Adrian in delicate lettering on the wall above where the crib once stood. He added small embellishments, little stars, a crescent moon evoking the night sky they had once envisioned for their child's peaceful dreams. When Cassandra returned that evening, she found him in the nursery, paintbrush in hand, tears slipping down his cheeks. He gestured silently to the wall. She pressed a hand to her mouth, eyes filling with tears. She joined him, picking up a brush and adding her own finishing touches. They worked side by side, recreating what had been lost. Forging a small sanctuary, not for a living child, but for a memory that would always hold a corner of their hearts. Afterward, they slumped together on the floor, leaning against the freshly painted wall. For the first time, the name Adrian brought them solace instead of sorrow. Several months later, the investigations concluded. Gordon faced penalties, steep fines, partial relinquishment of overseas assets, and a forced retirement from the board of Horizon Global Ventures. Alexander took the reins fully, albeit under the scrutiny of new compliance measures. The company survived battered but intact. For many employees, Alexander's willingness to confront corruption ignited a renewed faith in Horizon's future. Elias vanished from Boston's high society rumors, swirling that he fled the country. With no leverage left, his name faded into the background. Few missed him. During a quiet afternoon, Alexander and Cassandra strolled hand in hand through the Haven Complex Plaza. They paused at the stone panel near the entrance where Adrian had once been etched. A faint outline of the letters was still visible even after professional repairs. Instead of resentment, Alexander felt a gentle pang of remembrance. Cassandra rested her head on his shoulder. It's strange how it all turned out. Adrian's name brought so much conflict, but in the end, it brought us back together. Alexander nodded softly, kissing her temple. It's not the way I would have chosen, but I guess fate finds odd ways to guide us. She smiled through lingering sadness. I've been thinking a lot about the future, about maybe trying for another child one day. The corners of Alexander's mouth lifted. I'd like that, he whispered. And he knew despite the scars they were stronger than before. That evening they returned to the estate. Outside the nursery, Cassandra paused, placing her palm on the fresh paint. They didn't need to erase Adrian's memory anymore. Love and acceptance had replaced denial and guilt. In time, they would fill that house with laughter, and maybe, just maybe, Adrian's name would become a whisper of hope rather than a cry of loss. And there you have it, a tale of ambition and heartbreak, where a single etched name tore through family secrets and forced a reckoning that no one saw coming. In the end, Alexander and Cassandra found the courage to face the ghosts that haunted them, to stand up against blackmail, and to carve a new path defined not by hidden deals or erased memories, but by honesty and love. If this story resonated with you, reminding you that every challenge can be an opportunity to rediscover what truly matters, then help us share that message. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that delve into the heart of human drama tales of triumph, tragedy, and the unbreakable bonds that hold us together. Thank you for being part of this journey. We'll see you in the next story.